You cannot reconcile that. You can't take the salt out of the soup, okay? They're all in there, and you have no way to get them out. I'd also like to remind you, these machines have come into play and have taken over countries. South America right now is almost gone because of selections. Thank God for Brazil, or we would lose a continent, a whole continent to these machines. If you think that these are not selections, I beg you to sit down with me. I have another reason why you all should take a time to not certify, and that is I filed an ex parte emergency motion for temporary restraining order in an expedited election this morning. I am asking that you take the time to look through the pages of documents and proof that shows exactly what's going on.
All right, your time is up.
You have a constitutional oath. Article 7.7 of the Constitution, the highest number of legal ballots shall determine the winner.
Typically don't speak at these. I represent folks. I have an organization called Frontline America, and I also represent a media outlet, Real America's Voice News. We were denied entry, along with my colleague Jordan Conradson, to the election office, and I figured this was an appropriate time to redress my grievance. I spend most of my time on the southern border exposing the invasion that's going on down there, especially here in Arizona and what's coming into our country. The biggest concern I have is if this election is certified, the only parties that will benefit from this are the cartels. They've taken over Mexico, and sadly, they've taken over many politicians in America. What we saw on Election Day was outrageous, and to say that it was anything but that is either you think we're stupid or you're just that arrogant. What we've seen from you in the election office and your response, very simple questions needed to be asked. 2020 was a disaster. How was 2022 worse? You cannot say that you can certify an election when half of the voting machines were down. Was it 1,000 people that were disenfranchised? Was it 10,000 of the people that were there in line, or the people that didn't show up because they saw on the news the election machines didn't work? The fact that you've already made up your minds, you've already made the decision. This is all semantics. All of us coming up here and speaking is semantics. You've already made your vote. You've already made this decision. You said the world is watching, and you're right. They're watching, and they're watching this disaster play out in front of them. You responded to the AG with the most pathetic, inept response I've ever seen. You have not redressed the grievances of these people. That is the question. And the answer that I hear from everyone across this room is you cannot certify. So the question is, what is the remedy? The fact that you were on a PAC that was going against Kari Lake, as well as Richer, going against Kari Lake, how can you say that there's no conflict of interest? You have a Secretary of State running against a gubernatorial candidate. How can you say there's no conflict of interest? And then your machines go down on Election Day. It is absolutely outrageous. If you certify today, the only thing you'll be certifying is your corruption.
Tom Vonick, I am a Maricopa County resident. I worked as a registration clerk at the Dysart Community Center at 14414 North El Mirage Road on November 7th and 8th. On November 7th, we had a few issues with the printers, but by the end of the day, we had everything functioning properly. On the 8th, we arrived for our shift at 5:30 a.m. When we started our equipment check, none of the site books would connect to the server. We couldn't even access the time clock to punch in. These are the machines that don't connect to the internet, but they wouldn't connect to the internet, so we couldn't start our day. Anyway, our troubleshooter was not on site and could not immediately be reached, so we called the county hotline. The hotline was unable to resolve our issues, so we asked for a T-Tech to be dispatched to our location. Meanwhile, voters began to show up, and we started explaining to them what was going on. By 6 a.m., we had a small crowd, 10 to 15 voters, and we had to tell them we had no way of checking them in. They could either wait for the problem to be resolved or go to another polling location to vote. Most of them left. Eventually, our troubleshooter showed up, but could not fix the problem, and he suggested that we continue to wait for the T-Tech. While we were waiting, more voters showed up and had to be given their options. At least 50 people were turned away in this process. The T-Tech eventually showed up and got the site books to communicate with the main server, so we were able to clock in for our shift, but there was still a communication issue with the printers. When we finally ran test prints and it looked like the issue was fixed, We announced that the polls were open, and I checked in the first voter. It was now about 7 a.m. The first voter was checked in, but the printer immediately failed to print her ballot. We again started scrambling to figure out the problem and managed to get it resolved fairly quickly. We were officially in business, but we
All
were
right,
over
I'm
an
so
hour
sorry.
late.
Your time is up.
Yes, I'm Teresa Breithaupt, and I live in Phoenix. I don't normally do this, so I'm really kind of nervous. I'm doing this for my child and my grandchildren. I feel that we're losing our nation because we can't have fair, transparent elections. I do have a question. Many of the issues I'm going to bring up have already been addressed, but one of my questions is why we have board members on this board that have formed a PAC that went after conservative candidates. I just don't understand that. Also, Mr. Richards, I'd like to, I think you need to stop boasting about the great job you've done, and you guys need to stop saying he did such a great job when it's evidence that we had long lines. The majority of the machines weren't working. There were people that could not vote, and there is evidence of voter harvesting. I do not have faith in our elections, and I feel that my vote did not even count. I think it's time that we go to same-day vote, paper ballots, and no more machines. And I do thank you for your time.
Hello, I'm Janelle Weaver. I live in Goodyear. I was a poll observer in Tonopah at the Valley Baptist Church on Election Day. I was there at 5:40 in the morning, so I saw the opening procedures, and I left at about 1:40. From the start, both tabulators were not working. I was told by the workers that the second machine wasn't working the night before during a test run, but the first one had ran perfectly until the morning. Maricopa County was notified about the second tabulator not working, and they were told that the county would send them one the first thing in the morning. By the time I left at 1:40, there was not a second tabulator that was working. The inspector surmised that perhaps it was the printers that were the problem, and they were trying to figure that out. At 7:17 a.m., that's an hour and 17 minutes after the polls had opened, the first tabulator was working, but was only processing 1 out of 5 ballots. That's about 20, at about 8:30, only 26% of the ballots had been processed. That's a lot of people that did not get their ballots processed.
Arizona, and I'm with Wickenburg Action Group. I'm going to read from Proverbs 28:1. It says, "The wicked flee when no one is chasing them, but the godly are bold and lions." You see any bold people who are lions here? They're committed to this thing, so am I. When there is moral rot within a nation, its government topples easily. But with honest and sensible leaders, there is stability. Would you take a minute and just reflect on all the parents that have lost their kids in wars, who have fought for your right to vote? A vote. Not boxes and pallets of ballots. Ballots aren't votes. You're trampling on their sacrifice of the parents that lost their children. Do you feel that? This is a travesty. You mathematically cannot mess this up this many years in a row. It's mathematically impossible. And then I understand there's a few of you that have got a PAC where you put money in and your effort to make sure none of those MAGA people get voted in. You don't see the conflict of interest there? Moral decay, the fox watching the hen house, you just get that, you think it's okay, right? Is that your world? Yeah, it's not my world. I want you to feel shame. Shame is defined as painful feeling of humiliation or distress caused by your consciousness of wrong or foolish behavior. I'm going to leave you with this. You're playing into Klaus Schwab's "you will own nothing and you will be happy." Sirs and ma'ams, nothing is not owned by Nobody. Everything is owned by somebody.
Thank you very
Your
much
stuff
for your
is going to
time.
be owned not by you, and you are playing into
Thank
their
you.
hand.
My name's Raquel Contachesi. I'm a Maricopa County resident. There's a lot to say, but a lot's already been said at the last meeting and this meeting. You have had people personally come up here and testify of their personal experiences as a voter, as a poll worker, and as an poll watcher. I was also an observer, and I can let you know that there were multiple problems going on, just as you've already heard and that you guys are already aware of. I think one issue that's kind of not being highlighted enough is that in drawer 3, when the polls close, when the last voter leaves, when the equipment is being taken down, when tabulators were opened, there were, at one site in particular of someone I know, they did not separate drawer 3 ballots from the tabulated ballots. That's in the tabulator. In my particular site, they did at least initially try to rerun the drawer 3 ballots, but then at that point, and there was only 2 that ever, took from, I don't know, the hundreds that they were trying to rerun, they commingled the untabulated ballots of drawer 3 with the tabulated ballots. There is no way to ever sort that and track that. Those are lost votes. Those are lost voices. You guys have heard. I have no idea why you can say, and Richard can say, things like election run extremely well, mastery with election process, professionalism and integrity. How can you say that after hearing people coming up personally, not just here, but you've heard other reports, but here, you cannot say that this went well. People were disenfranchised. There were problems. Things were not run okay. So quit trying to say that. Just acknowledge it, and let's figure out what we need to do to fix it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
And may I ask you, thank you for your testimony, so you were a worker at this?
I was an observer.
Observer.
Yeah,
and which one were you an observer at?
I was over off of Central Lutheran. It was off of Camelback and 7th Street, right before there.
Hello, my name is Gail Golick, and I'm from Scottsdale, Arizona. And Chairman Gates, you mentioned that you are under obligation by law to canvass and certify this today. In fact, in the election procedural manual on page 234, it says a canvass must be conducted by the statutory deadline, but should not be conducted until all necessary audits have been completed to verify the accuracy and integrity of the election results. We do not have accuracy. We do not have integrity in these election results. I am asking that you stop the certification today until we can get some more audits. Okay, we need audits on the ballots. We've heard testimony today that there were intermingled